There are landscapes that don't try to impress you at first glance. They unfold slowly, almost quietly, until you realize what you're looking at shouldn't feel this unreal. Some places don't shock the eye immediately. They challenge it, layer by layer, until reality itself starts to feel negotiable. It begins in Hubei, within the narrow depths of Enshi Pingshan Canyon, where vertical cliffs rise sharply on both sides, and emerald water flows through a corridor so clear and still that boats appear to float in midair, turning depth and distance into optical illusion. Then the terrain fractures at Anjihai Grand Canyon, where the ground splits open into dramatic bands of red, amber, and ash, sharply cut cliffs plunging downward as if the surface of the planet had been peeled back to reveal something too vivid, too graphic to seem untouched by design. And finally, winter overtakes everything at Rime Island in Jilin, where trees along the river become encased in thick, crystalline frost, each branch coated in delicate ice formations that turn the landscape into a silent, white illusion. So intricate and surreal, it feels less like weather and more like a world paused mid-transformation. How many places like this exist beyond the version of China most people think they know? And if landscapes can look this improbable in plain sight, how much of the planet have we mistaken as ordinary simply because we haven't seen it yet? This is unseen China, where scale bends perception, color defies expectation, and nature quietly creates scenes that don't just look unreal, they make you question what real is supposed to be. Rime Island. Could there truly be a place where winter does more than blanket the landscape in white, instead reshaping nature into forms so precise that they seem intentionally sculpted? At Rime Island in Jilin, supercooled vapor rising from the Songhua River collides with sub-zero air, crystallizing onto every branch in dense layers that gradually redefine the structure of the trees themselves. Rather than forming a thin, decorative frost, the rime accumulates steadily over time, expanding outward until trunks and limbs appear inflated, softened, and transformed into monumental white silhouettes. This continuous deposition alters not only the surface texture of the forest, but also its perceived geometry, replacing sharp lines with rounded contours that resemble deliberate sculptural work. As dawn light filters through the frozen canopy, each crystalline surface refracts and diffuses illumination in a way that produces a subdued radiance, amplifying the illusion that the entire island has been staged for visual impact. The contrast between the pale winter sky, the slow, dark current of the river, and the dense white formations generates a compositional balance so exact that it challenges the assumption of randomness. Yet every detail is governed strictly by thermodynamics, humidity gradients, and the persistent flow of water that sustains the vapor necessary for the phenomenon to continue. What appears ornamental is in fact the cumulative result of atmospheric physics operating with remarkable consistency over successive freezing cycles. Standing within this environment, observers often experience a subtle perceptual distortion, as the forest's mass and rigidity seem replaced by something weightless and almost architectural. In that moment of hesitation between scientific explanation and visual disbelief, Rime Island reveals its improbable beauty, an extraordinary demonstration of how natural processes alone can generate forms that rival the most meticulous human design. Anji High Grand Canyon. Could a canyon formed solely by tectonic uplift and relentless river erosion display such deliberate symmetry and chromatic precision that it challenges our fundamental assumptions about randomness in nature? At Anji High Grand Canyon in Xinjiang, the Anji High River has carved through thick sedimentary sequences over immense geological timescales, unveiling vast stratified walls where bands of deep red, muted gold, charcoal gray, and pale beige extend across the landscape with astonishing clarity and order. Rather than appearing chaotic or fractured, these exposed layers align in remarkably coherent horizontal formations, each one representing a distinct era of deposition shaped by ancient climate systems and shifting terrestrial environments. As seasonal meltwater accelerates through the gorge, it does more than deepen the canyon floor. It methodically refines the contours of the cliffs, sharpening vertical drops while sculpting intricate subsidiary channels that branch outward like vascular systems. From an elevated perspective, the canyon reveals itself as a monumental geological cross-section, where contrasting mineral compositions produce tonal transitions so crisp and deliberate that the terrain resembles a meticulously rendered topographic model. The interaction between sunlight and the canyon's stepped relief intensifies the saturation of its mineral pigments, causing entire sections of the wall to glow with an almost synthetic vibrancy despite their purely natural origin. Simultaneously, shadowed recesses introduce depth and dimensionality, reinforcing the illusion that the landscape has been engineered to emphasize structural drama and visual hierarchy. What is most extraordinary, however, is not simply the canyon's scale, but the way in which erosion has exposed the Earth's internal chronology with such legibility that the passage of time becomes visually perceptible. Every ridge, incision, and color transition is governed by measurable geological processes: compression, uplift, sedimentation, and fluvial incision. Yet the cumulative result transcends technical explanation and enters the realm of aesthetic improbability. In confronting this vast convergence of time, mineral chemistry, and hydraulic force, Anji Grand Canyon ultimately reveals a beauty so precise and so structurally coherent that it feels less like a natural accident and more like a masterwork composed by the planet itself.
Chaka Salt Lake. Could a lake form through nothing more than evaporation? Mineral concentration and climatic extremes truly resemble a flawlessly engineered mirror stretching beyond the limits of vision. At Chaka Salt Lake in Qinghai, prolonged aridity and intense high-altitude solar radiation have concentrated dissolved salts into an expansive crystalline crust whose surface achieves an extraordinary degree of flatness and structural uniformity. When seasonal meltwater or shallow inflow spreads evenly across this mineral platform, it forms a thin, undisturbed film that transforms the entire basin into a reflective plane of remarkable optical precision. Under these conditions, clouds, mountain silhouettes, and even distant figures are duplicated with such symmetry that the horizon line appears to dissolve, momentarily destabilizing the viewer's sense of spatial orientation. This striking visual phenomenon is not the result of chance alignment, but rather the predictable outcome of hydrological equilibrium, mineral saturation thresholds, and minimal topographic variation interacting within a controlled climatic framework. As sunlight strikes the shallow saline surface at low angles, it intensifies both reflectivity and contrast, amplifying the illusion that sky and earth have merged into a single continuous field of light. Even slight atmospheric shifts or subtle ripples across the water introduce controlled distortions that ripple outward in measured patterns, reinforcing the perception that the landscape is dynamically responsive, yet compositionally balanced. Beneath this luminous veneer lies a dense accumulation of sodium chloride and other evaporite minerals, deposited gradually over successive evaporation cycles that have refined the basin's surface into near geometric smoothness. What distinguishes Chaka is the paradox between its elemental simplicity, water, salt, sunlight, and wind, and the overwhelmingly sophisticated visual effect these forces collectively produce. In the suspended moment when reflection becomes indistinguishable from reality, Chaka Salt Lake reveals a form of improbable beauty generated entirely by natural processes, demonstrating that geology and climate alone can construct scenes that rival the most meticulously calculated human design.
Wanfenglin. Could a landscape shaped solely by limestone dissolution and tectonic uplift assemble itself into formations so rhythmically ordered that they appear intentionally composed from above? At Wanfenglin's scenic area in Guizhou, thousands of karst peaks rise abruptly from the earth in dense clusters, their conical silhouettes extending across the horizon with a repetition that feels mathematically precise rather than accidental. These formations are the result of prolonged chemical weathering, as slightly acidic rainfall gradually dissolves soluble rock layers, isolating resistant cores that now stand as steep, independent towers. Over immense geological timescales, this slow process of dissolution carved valleys between the peaks, creating a topography defined not by chaotic fragmentation, but by a strikingly coherent structural rhythm. From an elevated vantage point, the landscape resembles an ocean frozen in motion, where each limestone hill appears as a wave crest, suspended at the exact moment before collapse. Morning mist drifting between the peaks further amplifies this illusion, softening depth cues and allowing the terrain to unfold in layered gradients that intensify its visual complexity. The interplay between cultivated fields at the base and the vertical limestone forms above introduces a scale contrast that reinforces the monumental presence of the karst structures. What is most remarkable is the uniformity of spacing and proportion among the peaks, as if erosion operated under an invisible blueprint governing distance, height, and alignment. Yet every contour and interval is dictated strictly by lithology, rainfall patterns, groundwater flow, and the persistent mechanics of carbonate dissolution. In confronting Wanfenglin's vast field of stone pinnacles, one encounters a landscape whose improbable beauty arises not from artistic intervention, but from the disciplined consistency of natural forces acting patiently across geological epochs. Enshi Pingshan Canyon. Could a canyon carved by water alone generate water clarity and structural depth so extraordinary that it appears digitally enhanced rather than naturally formed? At Enshi Pingshan Canyon in Hubei, a narrow gorge slices through dense karst terrain, revealing steep limestone walls that descend almost vertically toward an emerald river of astonishing transparency. Over extended geological periods, persistent fluvial erosion gradually incised the carbonate bedrock, deepening the channel while preserving sharply defined cliff faces that frame the water with architectural precision. The mineral composition of the riverbed, combined with minimal sediment disturbance, allows light to penetrate deeply into the water column, creating an optical effect in which boats appear to hover weightlessly above the canyon floor. This striking illusion is not a trick of perspective, but the predictable outcome of clear hydrological conditions interacting with steep rock geometry and controlled light refraction. As sunlight filters between the towering walls, it strikes the water at narrow angles, intensifying the green-blue spectrum and amplifying contrast between submerged stone and surface reflection. Simultaneously, shadowed recesses along the limestone faces introduce a layered depth that reinforces the canyon's vertical scale and heightens its dramatic spatial composition. From above, the river resembles a luminous ribbon threading through stone, its curvature emphasizing the canyon's confinement while guiding the eye through a sequence of precisely framed visual corridors. What distinguishes this landscape is the equilibrium between erosion and preservation, where the same force that carved the gorge has also maintained the clarity that defines its visual impact. Even subtle atmospheric changes, shifting mist, drifting clouds, or fluctuating sunlight, alter the canyon's chromatic intensity without diminishing its structural coherence. Despite the apparent fragility of its transparent waters, every element within the gorge is governed by measurable geological and hydrological processes operating in sustained balance. In that convergence of depth, clarity, and vertical stone architecture, Enshi Pingshan Canyon reveals a form of improbable beauty created entirely by natural forces, demonstrating how time and water can compose a scene that rivals the most deliberate human design. Huanglong. Could a mountainside shaped only by mineral-rich water and extreme alpine conditions produce terraces so intricate and luminous that they appear deliberately engineered from above? At Huanglong Scenic Area in Sichuan, calcium-laden spring water flows steadily down a forested slope, depositing layers of travertine that gradually solidify into stepped basins of remarkable structural precision. Over prolonged geological intervals, this continuous mineral precipitation has constructed thousands of shallow pools, each bordered by calcified rims that define clear boundaries with almost architectural clarity. Rather than forming irregular accumulations, the terraces align along the natural gradient of the valley, creating a cascading sequence that resembles a carefully composed hydrological staircase. The water within these basins varies in hue from turquoise to pale gold, a chromatic range determined by depth,
mineral concentration, and the refraction of high-altitude sunlight. As light penetrates the shallow pools, it intensifies the saturation of dissolved carbonates, producing a luminous transparency that amplifies the illusion of artificial coloration. Simultaneously, surrounding snow peaks and dense conifer forests frame the terraces with contrasting textures, reinforcing the visual hierarchy between fluid surface and solid relief. What appears ornamental is in fact the cumulative result of chemical deposition operating with patient consistency, layer upon layer, season after season. The precision of each rim is governed not by design, but by the physics of flow rate, temperature fluctuation, and carbon dioxide degassing within the spring system. From an elevated vantage point, the entire formation unfolds like a golden dragon winding through the valley, its segmented body defined by water, mineral, and gradient. Despite its delicate appearance, the structure is dynamically sustained as fresh mineral deposits continuously reinforce and extend the existing terraces. In this convergence of chemistry, climate, and topography, Huanglong reveals an improbable beauty generated entirely by natural processes, demonstrating how incremental forces acting over time can produce formations that rival the most meticulous human construction. Namtso Lake. Could a high-altitude lake formed by tectonic uplift in glacial melt possess such chromatic intensity and spatial purity that it appears almost detached from the physical world? At Namtso Lake in Tibet Autonomous Region, the vast basin rests more than 4,700 meters above sea level, where thin atmosphere and relentless sunlight amplify the lake's striking cobalt and sapphire tones. Encircled by snow-covered ranges of the Nianchen Tanglha Mountains, the water occupies a tectonic depression created by the immense collision between the Indian and Eurasian plates. Over millennia, glacial meltwater and limited outflow have maintained a saline composition, subtly influencing the lake's clarity and reflective capacity. The combination of altitude, mineral content, and minimal atmospheric diffusion intensifies the saturation of blue wavelengths, producing a visual depth that feels almost hyper-real. From the shoreline, the boundary between water and sky often dissolves, as mirrored cloud formations replicate across the surface with near-perfect symmetry. Wind sweeping across the plateau introduces controlled undulations that shift light patterns without disrupting the lake's expansive coherence.
Despite its apparent stillness, the basin is shaped continuously by seasonal freeze-thaw cycles that regulate water level and shoreline morphology. What distinguishes Namso is not only its scale, but the stark minimalism of its surroundings, where barren plateau, distant snow peaks, and uninterrupted sky frame the water in disciplined simplicity. In that convergence of tectonic force, glacial supply, and high-altitude light, Namso Lake reveals a rare and improbable beauty forged entirely by natural processes, standing as a monumental testament to the planet's capacity for precise and overwhelming visual composition. Naladi grassland. Could an alpine grassland, shaped only by tectonic uplift, glacial retreat, and seasonal climate cycles, unfold with such compositional harmony that it appears intentionally designed from above? At Nalati grassland in Xinjiang, expansive meadows stretch across the foothills of the Tian Shan Mountains, where rolling terrain transitions seamlessly into forested slopes and distant snow-lined ridges. This landscape owes its structure to ancient mountain-building processes that elevated the terrain, followed by prolonged erosion that softened contours into broad, undulating forms. Seasonal snowmelt feeds an intricate network of streams that carve subtle channels through the grassland, creating natural divisions that organize the plain without fragmenting its visual unity. During peak growing months, dense vegetation blankets the valley floor in saturated greens, while shifting light across the slopes generates gradients that accentuate depth and curvature. The interplay between open pasture, dark conifer stands, and sharply defined alpine peaks produces a layered composition that feels both expansive and precisely balanced. Atmospheric clarity at high elevation intensifies contrast, allowing distant ridgelines to remain sharply legible against the horizon. Although the scene appears pastoral and tranquil, it is governed by measurable ecological cycles involving precipitation patterns, soil composition, and temperature variation. Even grazing patterns and natural drainage contribute to subtle, textural differences that refine the surface of the meadow over time. In the convergence of geological uplift, climatic rhythm, and biological renewal, Naladi grassland reveals an improbable beauty created entirely by natural systems, demonstrating how large-scale forces can assemble a landscape of remarkable order and visual serenity without human intervention. Kalajun grassland. Could a highland meadow shaped by tectonic force and seasonal climate cycles display such structural rhythm and chromatic balance that it seems deliberately composed from the sky?
At Kalajun grassland in Xinjiang, vast alpine pastures unfold across elevated plateaus, where rolling hills transition in measured succession toward distant snow-lined ridges of the Tian Shan Range. This terrain was first defined by tectonic uplift that raised the landmass, then gradually refined by erosion and glacial retreat that softened its contours into sweeping, undulating forms. Over time, seasonal snowmelt has carved shallow drainage lines through the meadows, introducing subtle divisions that organize the landscape without disrupting its visual coherence. During peak growth periods, dense grasses and wildflowers saturate the hillsides in layered greens and muted golds, generating tonal gradients that emphasize curvature and depth. The alternating pattern of illuminated slopes and shadowed folds enhances three-dimensional relief, reinforcing the impression of a naturally engineered topography. Scattered forest patches and distant mountain backdrops contribute vertical contrast, anchoring the open grasslands within a broader alpine framework. Atmospheric clarity at this elevation sharpens distant outlines, allowing ridgelines and horizon transitions to remain distinctly legible even across considerable distances. Despite its pastoral serenity, the meadow is regulated by climatic precision, where temperature fluctuation, precipitation distribution, and soil composition dictate vegetation density and seasonal transformation. Wind movement across the plateau introduces gentle kinetic texture, causing waves of grass to ripple in synchronized motion that further unifies the scene. What appears effortless and organic is in fact the cumulative result of geological uplift, hydrological shaping, and ecological adaptation operating consistently over immense timescales. In that convergence of mountain-building forces and living systems, Kalajun grassland reveals an improbable beauty generated entirely by natural processes, demonstrating how the Earth can assemble vast landscapes of remarkable order without deliberate design. Air-high lake. Could a freshwater lake, shaped by tectonic extension and sustained by mountain runoff, achieve such visual equilibrium that it appears intentionally framed within its surroundings? At Air-high Lake in Yunnan, a long, crescent-shaped basin stretches along a fault-controlled depression, its form defined by the gradual pulling apart of the Earth's crust over geological time. Encircled by the Changshan Mountains to the west, the lake occupies a structural corridor where uplifted ridges and subsiding terrain converge in measured balance. Over successive climatic cycles, inflowing streams have replenished the basin, while sediment deposition subtly reshaped its shoreline into gentle arcs and shallow inlets.
The lake's surface, often remarkably calm, functions as a reflective plane that duplicates mountain silhouettes and cloud formations with near-symmetrical clarity. Under shifting daylight conditions, variations in depth and suspended particles influence color gradients that transition from soft turquoise to deeper blue-green tones. This chromatic modulation is governed not by artistic intent, but by hydrological transparency, mineral content, and the angle of solar incidence. When wind crosses the water, controlled ripples introduce dynamic texture, momentarily fragmenting reflections without disrupting the overall compositional coherence. The interplay between open water, terraced agricultural land, and distant ridgelines establishes a layered spatial hierarchy that feels precisely arranged despite its natural origin. What distinguishes Air High is the equilibrium between geological structure and ecological vitality, where tectonic history provides the framework for sustained freshwater systems. Even seasonal fluctuations in water level subtly adjust shoreline contours, reinforcing the lake's adaptive yet stable morphology. In the convergence of crustal movement, hydrological continuity, and atmospheric clarity, Air High Lake reveals an improbable beauty formed entirely by natural processes, demonstrating how structural geology and living systems can coalesce into a landscape of disciplined and enduring elegance. Huangguoshu Waterfall. Could a waterfall formed by tectonic uplift and sustained river force project such structural power and visual symmetry that it appears deliberately engineered into the landscape? At Huangguoshu Waterfall in Guizhou, the Baishui River plunges over a broad limestone escarpment, descending in a continuous curtain whose width and vertical drop create an immediate sense of monumental scale. This dramatic cascade is the direct consequence of differential erosion, where softer rock layers beneath a resistant cap have gradually receded, leaving a sharply defined ledge from which the river now falls. Over extended geological intervals, the relentless impact of water has deepened the plunge pool and carved recesses behind the falling sheet, subtly reshaping the cliff while preserving its commanding profile. Unlike narrow alpine cascades, the waterfall spreads laterally across the rock face, forming a near-uniform veil that reinforces the impression of structural coherence rather than fragmented descent. As water accelerates over the brink, gravity converts potential energy into kinetic force, generating mist plumes that diffuse sunlight into shifting prisms of refracted color. These suspended droplets create transient halos and spectral arcs, adding atmospheric dimension without diminishing the solidity of the underlying rock formation. During peak flow periods, increased discharge thickens the water curtain, intensifying acoustic resonance and amplifying the perception of volume and mass. Conversely, reduced seasonal flow exposes segments of the limestone wall, revealing stratified textures that testify to the waterfall's geological origin. What distinguishes Huangguoshu is the equilibrium between erosive power and structural stability, where continuous hydraulic force refines but does not erase the defining cliff line. The surrounding karst terrain further channels tributaries toward the main drop, reinforcing the waterfall's role as a focal convergence point within the broader hydrological system. In this convergence of tectonic structure, fluvial persistence, and atmospheric interaction, Huangguoshu Waterfall reveals an improbable beauty forged entirely by natural forces, demonstrating how sustained erosion can construct a spectacle of remarkable scale and disciplined grandeur. Guoliang Tunnel. Could a passage carved directly into a vertical cliff face embody such improbable presence that it appears less constructed than revealed from within the mountain itself? At Guoliang Tunnel in Henan, a narrow roadway cuts through sheer rock walls high above a deep valley, its openings exposing abrupt views of precipices and layered stone. Although human hands initiated its excavation, the tunnel's dramatic setting is entirely dictated by the Taihang Mountains' tectonic uplift and prolonged erosion. The surrounding cliffs, composed of dense sedimentary rock, rise almost vertically, forming a rigid geological framework that defines both the scale and orientation of the passage. Rectangular, window-like apertures punctuate the outer wall, allowing natural light to penetrate the interior while simultaneously framing expansive vistas of the rugged terrain below. These openings do more than illuminate. They establish a rhythm along the rock face that aligns with the stratified structure of the mountain itself. The interplay between raw stone surfaces and shifting daylight accentuates textural contrasts, reinforcing the canyon's depth and vertical intensity.
From a distance, the tunnel appears seamlessly integrated into the cliff, as though the mountain had fractured along a precise, linear corridor. In the convergence of monumental geology and improbable human adaptation to terrain, Guoliang Tunnel reveals a setting where the overwhelming beauty of natural structure defines the experience, reminding observers that even engineered spaces remain subordinate to the forces that shape the mountain first. Yellow Dragon Cave. At Yellow Dragon Cave in Hunan, an immense karst system extends beneath the surface, where underground rivers have gradually hollowed out towering vaults and interconnected galleries over immense spans of time. Through the slow process of carbonate dissolution, slightly acidic groundwater in large fractures within the bedrock, carving vertical shafts and expansive halls with remarkable structural continuity. Simultaneously, mineral-saturated droplets descending from the ceiling deposited calcite layer by layer, giving rise to stalactites, stalagmites, and columnar formations that appear meticulously sculpted. These formations align in dense clusters and isolated pillars, creating spatial compositions that feel balanced and rhythmically distributed throughout the cavern. When artificial light reveals their surfaces, subtle variations in translucency and mineral density refract illumination in a way that heightens depth and dimensional contrast. What seems ornamental is in fact the cumulative result of hydrological chemistry operating with patient consistency across thousands of years. In this convergence of dissolution, deposition, and subterranean flow, Yellow Dragon Cave reveals an improbable beauty created entirely by natural processes, demonstrating how darkness, pressure, and time can construct spaces rivaling the grandeur of monumental architecture. Lop Nur. Could a vanished inland sea, erased by shifting climate and redirected rivers, present a landscape so stark and structurally defined that it appears almost beyond terrestrial logic? At Lop Nur in Xinjiang, the former lake basin now stretches as a vast, desiccated depression where tectonic subsidence once permitted water to accumulate before prolonged aridity gradually transformed it into an immense salt-encrusted plain. This structural lowland, formed through regional crustal movement associated with the broader dynamics of Central Asian uplift, provided the geological framework within which hydrological systems once converged and stabilized. As inflowing rivers shifted course and evaporation rates exceeded replenishment, dissolved minerals were left behind in successive cycles, concentrating across the exposed surface in thick saline deposits. Over time, these deposits fractured into expansive, polygonal patterns separated by narrow fissures,
generating geometric networks that extend toward the horizon with striking regularity. Persistent desert winds continue to sculpt the basin, redistributing fine sediments into low ridges and subtle undulations that emphasize the overwhelming horizontal scale of the terrain. Under intense solar radiation and minimal atmospheric moisture, the salt crust reflects light with such severity that visual contrast intensifies, occasionally distorting depth perception and flattening spatial cues. Despite the apparent emptiness of the landscape, each layer of sediment and mineral accumulation encodes a complex history of hydrological fluctuation, climatic transition, and geological adjustment. The absence of open water does not diminish the basin's presence. Instead, it amplifies the structural clarity of the landform, revealing the underlying framework that once sustained an inland sea. In this convergence of tectonic subsidence, hydrological retreat, and extreme aridity, Lop Nur reveals an austere yet improbable beauty forged entirely by natural processes, demonstrating how even disappearance itself can shape a landscape of remarkable and disciplined visual power.
Kekituo High. Could a mountain valley shaped by tectonic upheaval and prolonged river incision present such dramatic vertical relief and mineral complexity that it feels intentionally monumental? At Kekituo High National Geopark in Xinjiang, the Irtish River cuts through rugged granite formations, exposing steep cliffs and fractured rock faces that rise abruptly above the valley floor. These formations are the result of deep magmatic activity followed by uplift and erosion, processes that revealed crystalline structures once concealed beneath the Earth's surface. Over immense geological timescales, fluvial forces have incised narrow gorges into the resistant bedrock, refining sharp edges while preserving the imposing mass of the surrounding peaks. The contrast between dense conifer forests, angular granite walls, and reflective river surfaces establishes a layered composition that emphasizes both height and depth. Seasonal light variations intensify mineral textures within the exposed rock, highlighting veins and tonal shifts that testify to the region's complex geological history. Despite the apparent rigidity of the cliffs, ongoing weathering continues to fragment and reshape exposed surfaces, subtly altering the valley's contours. In this convergence of magmatic origin, tectonic uplift, and sustained river erosion, Kekituo High reveals an improbable beauty constructed entirely by natural forces, demonstrating how internal planetary processes can manifest as landscapes of disciplined scale and enduring visual power.